we are, and they're not American jobs. It just goes to show it's another bad decision that propels greater inflation. You all, Randy, you have a small business with us today too.
Yeah, I'm excited. We have a great small business, an agricultural co-op, and the gentleman that's been in the field, general manager for 39 years, Ed Wester, a close friend of mine. And I asked him to talk about the inputs and the inflationary costs that are hitting our farmers. So, Ed, I'd like to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being on today.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, and I want to thank you all for what you do there in Washington. And it goes unsaid that we need good people there to do good work. Looking at fertilizer prices for the farmer this past 5 years, from 2016 to 21, the prices were very stable, and it cost about $126 per acre to put on what I call a normal fertilizer to replace the nutrients that the crops take off. This spring, it was $226 an acre, up $100 an acre, and we're looking at projection of almost $300 an acre for 2023. Now, when you look at that, it's $170 an acre. The government's saying that our yield across the country is about the same, about 175 bushel per acre. So it increased the cost $1 a bushel when historically we're at 4. Now that just to break even on fertilizer would be $5, 25% increase, and that does not include the fuel. And like it was said by one of you there, that transportation and energy is such a big part of food production, both the inputs going into food production, but we're also dealing with commodities, which are a lot of volume, and to move that products and to get them to the markets and to be further processed, which takes more energy, is a big thing. So when we see the importance of food prices, when we're talking about shortage of baby formula, the country needs to be aware that some of these decisions that are being made on energy and on decisions on how we look at energy in the future has a direct impact and a tax, an inflationary tax on food and all the other basics that are out there. One of the things I pulled up, and I gave a copy of this, was the GAO report, and that, if you can read that, September 2003, domestic nitrogen fertilizer production depends on natural gas availability and prices. And that was nearly 20 years ago, and what happened in between then is we had fracking, which made the U.S. the #1 natural gas producer in the world, and yet we're still holding restrictions. My understanding is the natural gas industry wants more pipelines. They're willing to produce more. I don't know if this administration would support that. The other thing is, the cooperative system has 2 oil refineries out of the 100 oil refineries in the U.S. And talking to their engineers, and I didn't know this, that the Keystone pipeline, Keystone XL, when that was stopped, most refineries have to use a certain blend or viscosity of oil in their refineries, and they'll blend it from different sources. Well, the viscosity of the Canadian oil is very thick, but the industry needed that to offset the very thin, light fracking oil in order to run refineries. So in stopping that XL pipeline, it was really in an effort to stop the efficiency and profitability of fracking oil. And the last thing is, we're a cooperative. We work on 1% to 2% margin. We've been around for about 110 years. Farmers utilize us to try to do a good job of getting prices and supporting them and also marketing their products. But we're also an essential business. We did not shut down during COVID. But this past year, in 13 months, we had to raise our wages 15% to keep people working here on essential business. And that again goes into the cost production of the food and the cost to the country. One of the things right now, they say bacon's up 17% from a year ago, but the hog price that the farmers have raised is actually down from a year ago. So that gives an example of what's happening. So that's what I had.
You raised a very good point. The farmers are getting less, but the price is higher. You're dealing on a 1 to 2% margin. When government puts more regulation on and more scarcity, you don't make that up. I mean, it's very difficult. So I appreciate your feedback and what you're talking about. Now, Maria, you talked a little bit about this small business. I've been to this neighborhood. It's a beautiful place, and it was an honor that you let me come there. But I mean, I can only imagine the struggles that they go through as a small business.
Because they 70%, as I said, some of them do not speak Spanish, English very well. They do not know the system. They know, though, that this is the promised land and that they're going to do a lot better here than back home. They may not have that many resources, like you're saying, a lot of regulations, and then they don't get paid. And now, as Susie, I'm sure, is going to tell you, now you have to pay more for the raw materials. She is making ice cream for the tourists. And the Biden administration has imposed that every tourist or any foreign national that comes into the United States needs to get a COVID test. We live off tourism. 80% of our industry is tourism. So if you cannot get on that plane, you can come to 8th Street and buy the little Cuban coffee or her ice cream. So we are trying to, this is another initiative of ours that we need to ask the Biden administration, please, to do away with that mandate so we can have more influx of people from all over Ecuador, Central America, Europe, the rest of the United States. So we're in love with American exceptionality, with the American dream, but we do not like the fact that some administrations are making it a nightmare, not an easy job.
So you want to introduce Susie?
Sure, Susie. Know her very well. She has this beautiful store with a very big sign, very Latin sign. Outside of her shop is a big cone, ice cream cone. And she started, 5 years ago? No one really thought that she was going to be able to make it. And there she was working 24/7 and made it a very big, like a point where you have to go to. Right now is the landmark for any tourist that goes to 8th Street to visit the Cuban exile community. And there you are. And the names of the ice creams are like very picturesque as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit more, Susie?
Well, certainly thank you for having me here. And definitely it's an honor to be here. And so I've been in business, actually, this is going to be my 11th year. So being in Little Havana has changed a lot as time has gone by. But this year, most of all, it's crippling because we have gone 40% higher in just raw material. So even my farmers we go and purvey all of our fruits and vegetables in the Redlands, which is in Homestead here, which in Miami, and even that has gone higher. So forget about just the fuel to get, like, let's say, for instance, cups to me. So cups, you could say, are coming from California, they come from Mexico, but now they're like, it's impossible to even get the cups here. So imagine just everything, from the milk, from the heavy cream, from the eggs, to the cups, to the spoons. Now we also have to pay our employees higher because of all of the laws that are continuing to come down. So big business could say at Starbucks, which is now opening, believe it or not, down the street, they could say, oh yeah, we're going to pay everybody, $15, $16, $17 an hour. When we have kids that are from high school, it's impossible to continue this uphill climb without raising prices. So last week we actually did raise prices, and I already lost one of the culinary tours to it. So I'm not sure where this is going, but it's very scary for small business to be in this situation, me and everyone. And I really am thrilled because I actually have another store in Dallas. So I was in the two most opportune states that were not closing. So yeah, we stayed open in Dallas and we stayed open in Little Havana. But Little Havana was, I mean, there was not one customer in Little Havana because it is a tourist-driven neighborhood. I mean, we do have some locals, but yeah, we lost our shirt, last year and the year before. So we were hoping that this year things were going to be different. And then in comes the inflation, in comes the Biden administration. making moves that I really can't even understand. So unfortunately, for everybody in small business, we're going to have to pay the price. Whether we remain in business is another story.
Well, thank you for that. I want to turn to Brian if you want to ask a few questions of our small business based upon your committee there. Bring back some of the input that you've been hearing.
Yeah, I'd love to go back to the gentleman from Iowa, and because we're talking about food prices, and I think we all recognize we got a pretty serious situation in our hands with what's playing out with food in Ukraine from the national security standpoint, which makes American domestic production all the more important this year. As we look at those input costs, in particular on the energy side, I talked to farmers in Wisconsin who are filling up their tractors as they head out into the fields here in May, and diesel prices well over $5 a gallon. What that is doing to our farmers in the United States.
Well, I think part of the situation is farmers plan ahead. They have to plan ahead. So some of them, what we had this past year, they had pre-purchased and pre-bought. The issue is this coming year. And even if we're able to get fertilizer and inputs is a concern for this coming year. And if the inputs get too high and the risk gets too high, then the farmers who make a decision on every acre of ground themselves have to decide if they're going to raise this crop or that crop, which might take less inputs, and that can essentially put a lot of pressure on the market. Now, you probably know India put a hold on their exports. They only export about 8% of their wheat. And so wheat market's up about 70 cents a bushel this morning. And so you're seeing a lot of protectionism as we get tighter on these grain markets, and then that just accelerates inflation and food costs. So we need open trading and we need cheap energy, and the farmers will produce. That's what they want to do. They'll produce. You just got to give them an opportunity.
I think what's important there, leader, is that we realize as food cost prices have a significant risk of going up as we head throughout this year, that it's the energy policies of the Biden administration today, they're going to be driving up food costs for Americans as we move forward. I think that's one of the real damages of this administration, starting on day one, killing the Keystone Pipeline. It's a huge portion of the inflationary pressures we're feeling. Farmers are borrowing at higher rates. And as all of these food costs flow through the system, when families go to the grocery store and they're seeing these higher prices to feed their families, it's the Biden administration policies that are driving up their food prices.
Yeah, they did a study and they talk about it's more than $5,000 you're costing the average family because the price is going up. And then we hear from Susie that she has to raise her prices and she loses business over it. People have to make decisions. And, you know, what's interesting, the Democrats here is their only answer is to spend more, to do the wrong thing in the process, to not make energy lowering the cost. I mean, he just shut down just the other day a lease in Alaska that was opened up to be able to produce more. And then compound it with these more regulations after more regulations over one. I mean, you just heard from Ed and some of the things. Are you hearing from the farmers as well about it?
Yeah, I mean, they come to my forums and we hear it every day, the pain and the worry. I mean, just the worry of what the future looks like. And we just heard with India, not exporting any more wheat. I mean, these things just compound on each other.
This is a staple in our food process.
That's exactly right. And then you have the waters of the U.S. You have the EPA saying, hey, we're going to be punitive. We're going to fine you. I mean, it just never ends. And we're the breadbasket to the world. And yet the Biden administration wants to destroy the breadbasket to the world. I mean, it just makes no sense.
Yeah. I think that we have a leader. There is some hope at the end of the tunnel. November, elections come, things for the American electoral system. The American people, regardless of the political party, they have popular wisdom. There is wisdom out there that people understand who is imposing this governmental regulations. And I am sure that the American people will reward the Republican Party. Now it's up to us to be responsible to bring back prosperity to people like the ones that we're interviewing right now.
Well, a lot of the work that we're doing is towards our commitment to America.
Right.
How can we curve the inflation that has been created? First, stop wasteful spending. Secondly,
Right.
lower the energy cost. Everybody you heard here is what the problems. And God blessed America that we have a lot of natural resources. And what's so interesting is we look around the world and what's happening in Ukraine, what Russia has done tried to Europe. American natural gas is 41% cleaner than Russian natural gas.
Or China.
So
Right.
if you're caring about the environment, you want America to produce it more as is. But Michelle, you brought out a very good point. The price in California is so high, and I've never seen somebody communicate with their district so much as you do. I mean, you're hearing it time again at the cost and how difficult this is.
It is really difficult. In California, they never gave out one drilling permit. We have over 1,000 waiting right now since 1994. We have oil well in California, and we really have to open up. This is our national security, and we have to be self-sufficient, and it's not done. And on the top of it, we have AB5, and I don't know why federal government tried to pass something that failed policy that California went through. And I think that gentleman from Bakersfield, that
Dwight?
Dwight, I think he felt exactly same thing because his trucks that you cannot even bring it in, any trucks built before 2010, unless you fix all the engine up to Environmental Protection Agency's regulation, you have to met. So this is like totally unheard of. California is worse. I've been talking about it. Biden administration, on the top of our California administration, this Newsom administration, we really have to stop these liberal policies. If you are not giving any permits drill, then when are we going to get it?
Dwight, maybe you could touch on a little of the regulations that's been hitting you, compounding with the rising cost within California and others that you see within your business.
Yeah, we've, from regulation standpoints, not just oil and gas sector, which is kind of everything when we have the cleanest oil fields probably in the nation and gets infrastructure to produce it probably the quickest. But even on the transportation side, we have carb compliance. And so, we've basically retrofitted our entire fleet of about 130 trucks, which as you can imagine is not cheap to do. And it's a continuing snowball. And so, we don't know what's going to come next. So we've got to stay on our toes there from a regulation standpoint. And so it's really trying to keep up with it and then still trying to manage the business at the same time with all these other pressures coming from, from inflation and fuel and supply chain and labor. But I mean, it really just goes back to energy, like everybody's saying. We have the resources here locally to produce what the country needs and quit importing it from other countries. And, we're not given the green light to do so, even though we're the best at what we do. And that's what's hurting us.
What did it cost you to retrofit when you have the air quality coming in and telling you that?
Well, first it was retrofit by putting aftermarket filters on the trucks, and so we did that, and that would cost anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a truck. And now, as of 2023, those filters are no longer good, and we have to have brand new trucks with the OEM filters installed on them. And so, all of those trucks that we previously retrofitted and put $40,000 filters on, we are now going out and, if we can even find trucks, this is another supply chain issue, but we're going to go back out and spend $200,000 a truck just to keep our fleet going.
So you're being mandated in a time that a supply chain's tough. So you're making the supply chain worse, have to spend more money instead of investing in other places.
I think one of the things that's missed and clearly missed by the Biden administration is how the compounding impact of all these regulations, the impact that has at the consumer at the end of the day.
Yes.
So whether or not that's the
They pay
gentleman
for it.
fighting for his business in California and paying $30,000, $40,000, or whether or not it's what you brought up, Randy, with farmers, with Waters of the U.S., with the EPA's heavy-handed regulation. These regulations cost money for businesses to comply, and that cost eventually flows all the way through to consumers. And so when consumers are seeing higher costs, some of the higher costs that they're seeing is directly the result of heavy-handed regulations from the Biden administration.
Wouldn't it be, just on a philosophical basis, if you had a nation that was in the middle of a recession and had inflation going on, wouldn't you reverse the regulatory burden or give it a waiver from that place? Wouldn't economically that help the small business survive more?
But you know what's the problem, leader? That the Biden administration and the Democratic Party, and I feel very confident in saying this, they have been penetrated by neo-Marxist policies. You want to call them democratic socialism, fine. You want to call them progressive, fine. These are neo-Marxists, because when you are going against the system that has been established and that has worked for 300 years, then you have another type of ideology, which is not the American spirit. And that is the big problem that the American electorate is going to face in November and in 24. You could be more liberal. You could be a Democrat, and I'm sure that there are many noble people within the Democratic Party. But they are not. But neo-Marxism is what has hijacked the Dems, and you see it clearly, and we see it. I belong to the Foreign Affairs Committee. The moment, and this is an empirical evidence, the first moment when the Biden administration announced to the world that they were going to stop buying Russian oil, National Security Council advisor by the name of Juan Gonzalez, he's the one taking care of Latin America, he got on a plane and he went to talk to Nicolas Maduro. And he asked him, hey, could you sell some oil to us? Not really knowing or paying attention that the State Department official website had Nicolas Maduro as someone who was not the legitimate president of Venezuela. And on top of that, there's a $15 million bounty on his head. So how could you being the National Security Council advisor for Latin America, meeting with a guy that is not the legitimate president? What does that tell you? That there's an ideology that has penetrated the Democratic Party, or at least the Biden administration advisors or the people advising the president that are not, they do not have America at heart, or American interest at heart. Yeah. That's the problem.
Randy, you taught tax law and others. I mean,
that's the other part of it. So they want to pass Build Back Better, and what do they want to do? They want to dramatically increase the taxes on our small businesses and our farmers. Marxism. So what do they want to do? Yeah, stepped up in basis. All right, we want to tax if you transfer anything to your kids. Capital gains, we want to tax that. We want a right kind exchange. If you exchange your combine for something else, it goes on and on. And so all these farmers are looking at, okay, I've got higher inputs, I got supply chain issues, I'm not sure what's going to happen because of weather, and now you want to tax me? I mean, these people, they're in pain, and that's why November. All right, we can make a change in November and stop all this.
The American people will make a change in November.
No, but look, I want to thank all of you for participating. I want to thank you for what you do. I remember when I started my first small business when I was 20 years old. You don't know what you don't know, but I mean, it's some of the hardest lessons, and you risk everything. You want to be an entrepreneur, and for government to fight you, and in a time like this, I salute you to get through it, and we'll do everything in our power to one, try to make it a little easier, because I believe small business is the backbone of America. It's where businesses are created. It's where jobs are created. It's really where entrepreneurship and investment is there. So thank my members. Thank you. And look forward to continuing working with you.